What's up, my funky nudie branks? It's your main thing, DJ Alan Coulter, coming at you from the road again. Reno was nice. I didn't have a show. I just like to spend a week in a hot tub there sometimes. But then, you know how it goes. 2 a.m. on a Friday, you're drinking harps and eating onion rings, binging Girls 5 Eva on your iPad at a sizzler off the main drag. You check your calendar and realize you have a show tomorrow. Actually, technically today. And when you check the map, you see that Twin Falls, Idaho is a lot farther than you would think, Nevada and Idaho being neighbors and all. So you catch a nap in your car to sober up, you grab a gas station cappuccino and a honey bun, and you hit the road. I rolled into town about 2 p.m. and met my contact Ken at a truck stop. I was pretty fried by this point and wondered if we might go straight to the hotel. Ken said we better get to the venue and make sure everything was set first. I asked him to drive, but he said he didn't consent to government ID, so I drove. Ken, I learned on the way there, is a full-time nomad who lives with a couple of sheep who provide him milk and wool and a dog who protects them from predators. They graze in various local yards and pastures. I also learned that Ken is actually KN, pronounced the same. He told me it was a family name. When I inquired as to which family, he said none other than the descendants of one Evel Knievel. Oh, really? I asked. He lived in the area? No, but he jumped the Snake River Canyon right up the road, Ken said. Ah, that's right. Didn't he duff it, though? I said. Well, sure, but he was in town for like 2 months before that. You can figure out the rest, I bet. I could. Neat. The venue was a modest 2-story building with a mild barn aesthetic. The sign out front said, Third Mennonite Fellowship Center. Now, I've been in the game long enough to know that a venue is just that. What you do inside is the magic part, so I wasn't put off. I thought, this is probably some type of multi-use deal, the way the Unitarians do with punk shows. Look, if I were the type of person who had intuition about things, I'm not, this is probably where I would have started to wonder just what exactly was going on. We went inside, and if the place had a sort of hospital waiting room feel, that's only because that's exactly what it was. The building was currently being used as the Mennonite Regional Birthing Center. There were several groups of women in cape dresses and bonnets with their family members scattered around on folding chairs and sofas. Reruns of chariot racing played silently on TVs mounted in the corners. It was almost silent, but for the sounds of pencils on intake forms. I took Ken back outside and gently grilled him. Ken, what is the deal here? Ah, well, yes. What had happened was this. Some young people came to town one day, all beards and bow ties and messenger bags. They had a proposition. Let's throw a little music festival. Just leave it to us, they said. We have all the contacts and know how to weave this dream. I'll put you on the map again, and this is just the beginning. Well, they had just enough of that Portland sheen to impress us dull mountain folk, and given our brush with fame in the 70s, we just couldn't pass up another shot at the big time. It wasn't a week before they had permits and a grant from a local civic organization. We were all in. The big wheels of fate were in motion. But then one fine morning, incidentally, right around the time the first check from the Knights of Columbus cleared, we looked up and our dreamers from the West Coast had vanished in the night, gone without a goodbye. But I'll tell you a secret. I had gotten friendly with these folks, and I got a hold of their documents. Now, the Knights of Columbus would love to cut their losses, pretend it never happened, but I happen to know if we fulfill the contract, they will in fact have to pay us the remainder of the money owed. All we have to do is get the Mennonites on board. What do you say? Honestly, I wondered if Ken wasn't the music man here and I the simple townfolk. I thought about calling my manager, Rick Derringer, no relation. But what was the point at this late stage? A gig was a gig, and besides, if it got extra messy, I could really play the martyr if I waited until afterward to complain. I told him I was in, and we got to work. Ken huddled with the birthing center staff and made his pitch. It went rather smoothly. It turns out Ken is actually a well-regarded chap in the Magic Valley area, despite his unorthodox lifestyle. I'm told his generosity with his time and wool products assure that his friends outnumber his detractors. No easy feat for a guy whose most obvious physical characteristics are sunburn, chunky dreadlocks draped over a drug rug, and a rubber-gripped .38 always visible on his belt. We got the green light to host our little shindig as long as we kept the noise down and made sure the general tone of the proceedings didn't stray too far from Christ's light. We cleared some chairs in a corner by the TV. There wasn't any PA, but Ken called some friends who brought a few Bluetooth speakers and we daisy-chained them together. My hopes for freshening up a bit at the hotel were dashed when I saw musicians loading in instruments. This baby was at full term and there was amniotic fluid on the floor. I huffed it across the street to the Texaco and splashed some water in my face in pits. I threw together the most reverent fit I could muster on short notice. You could say it had a certain Zegna Milan Fashion Week 2024 vibe to it, if that was the sort of thing you said. I got back just as the music started. The first band was a hammered dulcimer mini-moog duo by the name of Anthropocene. Their vocals were a whisper rasp, but I gathered that all the songs were part of a mythos about a future where tree-human hybrid beings lived in harmony with all life on Earth. Surprisingly dissonant and sinister. Next up was Reese Adderley, a solo guitarist doing the American primitive Fahey finger-picking thing. All instrumental, but he did announce some song titles. Baphomet's Kia Soul, Euclidean Plain Non-Fat Yogurt, and Marshall McLuhan in Margaritaville. You'd laugh, but once you'd heard the tune, it fits so well you thought, yeah, that is the title of that song. It was spooky. Ken's crowd had showed up. Everything from spiked denim crustos to ag folk in Carhartts and boots. We kept the cheering to respectful finger snaps. The pregnants and their supporters didn't seem to mind. I wouldn't say they were into it, though. I was up next, and there was still time on the clock, and I really had to bring it home. I was a mess. You see, I'm a techno DJ. That's why people book me. But as you can imagine, that wasn't going to fly here. My mind was frayed by sleep deprivation and caffeine pills, but I had to think of something. I got up there behind the decks, closed my eyes, and prayed for deliverance. What I came up with was a thing I'm calling slow country dub, or ambient country sludge. If you got a better name, I'd love to hear it. Anyway, as luck would have it, a friend of mine, DJ Heartworn Highways, had recently sent me a thumb drive full of country music acapellas and instrumentals. She daylights as an analytic musicologist and was doing computer-assisted analysis on vocal tracks from country songs, encoding the melodies and tracking their change over time, whatever that means. For my part, I just slowed them down and drenched it in reverb because it sounds trippy. Now, I may seem like a cold Tony up there behind the wheels of steel, but it's purely pragmatic, I assure you. If you smile too much, people think you want to talk to them and they will make requests, so I maintain the vicious visage. But in reality, I'm a sensitive soul, looking out, checking in with the crowd, trying to anticipate their needs. At first I saw a few raised eyebrows, some smoothing of laps and folding of hands, but as the afternoon wore on, I think the gentle waft of warm dirge and familiar vocals was comforting, and we were lulled together. No one danced or anything. It was still the waiting room in a birthing center after all, but a few women did stand up and take a step or two closer to my little makeshift booth. One or two even caught themselves indulging in some minor swaying. I was right there with them. Halfway through the set, I felt like I had always been the DJ in this ultimate of liminal spaces. Literally a waiting room between birth and whatever comes before it. Nothing else existed outside of us, our hazy antiseptic bubble, and drippy Dwight Yoakam vocals over a reverbed-out reversed instrumental. What else do we need? Inevitably, as evening approached, we all floated softly back to Earth, none too sure of what had happened. Which is to say, we made it past the minimum time barrier without getting kicked out of the venue. The Mennonites even thanked us for a pleasant afternoon. Same time next year, Ken said to the woman at the front desk. Oh, I don't think so. Thanks a bunch, though. We packed up, and Ken directed me to our accommodations, which turned out to be his little wagon in a nearby pasture with his sheep and dog. The wool mats were actually pretty comfy, and the raw milk had a tang I have never tasted before or since. I got paid $4,000 a few weeks later. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Twin Falls. See you out there. Love, Alan.